Hey, so might cut this up into little bits of shorts, but mainly just kind of want to do an update of where I am with like production and songwriting and all the big topics and things that I've learned from just the years that I've been going through it and where I am now, and re-updating on a video I made a while ago, haven't released, but it was a log mostly, kind of like this. So I'm going to talk about it and kind of objectively talk about what I've learned, I guess. So I'll start with songwriting because that trickles into everything like production and singing and recording. So the main thing I think that I've done with songwriting is starting to lean into a particular sound. More like old school metal feel with modern production and some riffs, but like the structure of it feels more old school. The hooks feel more old school from the vocals. The guitars resemble some old school stuff with some modern flair. Same with the drums. Some like death metal influence, melodic death metal like Soilwork influence on the drums. Riffs are very inspired by. I'm trying to think of a good example. Something like Monuments, where it's kind of busy with riffs in the middle of the chorus and a lot of the sections, depending on the song, honestly, for what I do. Sometimes it's just busy during the chorus. Sometimes it's busier outside of it. But I like having those like riffs underneath it. Even if it's more of a wall of sound, it's still like there's something you gain from the changing frequencies that, like from a production sense, you get excitement from it. It'll peak up at certain ranges of the human hearing and then peaks that area of excitement, and then it goes lower and goes higher for like a riff like right, for example. You get the, it's more rhythmic, it's more impact based, so then that could like syncopate with the drums, right? And then it's more of a pocket feel groove, and then the bap bap when you come up on the guitar is like a whoa, the listener gets a little ear candy right there, just a little spark of sour or whatever you want the analogy to be, just a little spark of something that pops in there, little small motions of the idea in songwriting of tension and release, where a lot of the verse, right, is like your tension building, pre-chorus even more tension building, and you can always flip these. The verse could be the hook and the chorus could be this downplayed thing. But then a lot of the times you get to the release, and that's the chorus, where you resolve everything lyrically, you resolve everything thematic wise, all the pieces kind of come together that you heard in the verse. If you're doing more of a reference based song structure where everything kind of calls upon each other, and maybe you just replace layers or add or take away layers to create new sections instead of changing drum beats altogether. Like Gorillaz does that a lot, where it's a lot of layers and it's just one drum beat the whole time. So you can use layers to create those sections that ultimately you use for tension and release. Release, like you have a key, right? And your song is based around the key, either just in the chorus or in the verse, and you hint at it, in the verse before you get to the main chorus, or you do a chorus to start the song. There's so many ways to do it. But with the tension and release piece, when you have a verse, for example, that's the same key as the chorus, and then your pre-chorus might be a different key or a different energy, like double time drums from like a groovy kind of thing in the verse, like do ka do do ah do ka do ship, something like that, and then you get to the pre-chorus like do ka do ka do ka do ka do ka do ka, right? The snare now, ka, that sound is double timed. Do ka do ka do ka, right? And then do ka do ka. So you have that double time feel, creates tension. You're squishing together. You can think about it this way: to create tension, you squish together your rhythms. You make the subdivisions smaller, so from 8th note to 16th note, and you pack more together. You create more chaos, more to interpret for the listener, and then they just kind of are in this almost like fight or flight mode a little bit more of like, holy crap, I'm being assaulted. So you can use that idea with double time of do ka versus your verse being do ka do da do ka do, right? So you create that tension of added subdivisions, more notes that creates that feeling of excitement and or overwhelming, right? And so then you release to the chorus again. You go do, do, ka, do, 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 ka, do. So now it's halftime of what the verse was. Do, ka, do, ka, do, which is double halftime, or however you would notate that, right? You have time, then you have time again from the pre-chorus. Do, ka, do, do, ka, do, do, ka, do. So now your snare is happening once, where in the double time of the pre-chorus was happening 4 times in the same period as you get one snare for the chorus. And then that can be a release rhythmically of getting to a point of, whoa, it's opened up. Do, ka, do, do. It's like, okay, solace. Like we made it somewhere and I feel safe, right? Big open groove. Subdivisions are more spread out. And then you can give them that kind of feeling. And so that's an example you can do rhythmically. And things that I've learned a lot, especially, is you can do this with harmony, with melody, but rhythm is where you get a lot of the hooks and the drive and the sensation of the song, the energy of it. And then everything else is kind of flavor for the texture of how it feels, like sad, happy. The emotion you're evoking comes a lot from combination of rhythm and melody and harmony, but a lot of the other instruments then evoke the full emotion, where the drums really establish a lot of that foundational kind of vibe of the song, right? You could have synthwave stuff as do ga do ga do ga do, almost like a break beat or something fast, right? It'll completely change the foundational emotion group of it versus like intense versus more relaxed or passive laid back emotion. So you have these spectrums of more intense, right, and then more laid back. And so the drums can dictate your main footing a lot of the times foundationally between that intense to laid back. And then you use the other instruments for melody and harmony to then define further within there your aggressiveness or chillness of your music. But then there's other dimensions you spread beyond in those emotions of, okay, it's happy, but mixed with XYZ other emotion. Like there's a little bit of bittersweetness, right? Melancholy and joy. And so having that blend creates a new axis for this spectrum of aggressiveness and more laid back. So then you can expand that in these directions or up and down, right? Not just horizontally. So there's a whole blend of those things that you can do. And that's ultimately what these technical cadences, right, for song structure and chord progressions, 4-5-1, all these cadences, they're all to evoke certain emotions on this giant 3D, 4D, whatever graph of emotion that you can kind of tie together by grouping these categories, right? And so you use a combination of your rhythm, your harmony, and your melody to then evoke the specific three axis graph of your melody, sure, your rhythm, sure, the spectrum of all what you can do there, and then this way would be your harmony. And so you find your own little point, your data point within that 3-axis graph, and then you are coalescing your harmony, your rhythm, and your melody to meet that. And then that's your definition of whatever. It's all, there's a, it's all relative, and people get into genres, and I won't go too far into that. But genres are really just part of that same spectrum, right? It's a way of giving certain technical instrumentation choice and playing choice combined with lyrics and themes and the emotion that then people put into genres. And so it's labels to give us trajectories for what we can aim for mentally for a safety reason, right? It's like everything is fear or safe, right? Fear or, not content, but it's like you're fearful or you're safe, essentially. However you want to describe that emotion of safeness can be for anybody, right? You get peace of mind, essentially. Fear and peace of mind. So when you have that kind of tied in there, you use that same part of fear and peace of mind for your songwriting. That's ultimately what you're doing, is you're controlling your emotion, the listener's emotion, and exhibiting your own, like using yourself as a conduit to your computer, your instrument, whatever, being a conduit for that spectrum of tension and release, that spectrum of fear and peace of mind. And then you're playing with the psychology of the human being, right? You're putting them in fight or flight, and you're taking them out of it and relieving them. It's a whole experience, a roller coaster, right? That's the analogy I always think of when I describe these things, is energy roller coaster. And then that's what you're doing with tension and release. You're doing that with your choices in melody and harmony, and you can do it by pulling and pushing and pulling on, juxtaposing emotions, right? That can be your roller coaster. That can be your night and day, your fear, peace of mind dichotomy, right? So that's the main thing, is I've been focusing with the songwriting on understanding how I evoke those different the different axes, sure. How I access the multiple axes. Axled. Come on, I engineer. I do engineer things, man. What is an axis but multiple of? Axes. We're going to call them across the 3-axis graph of however you want to smush together your emotions. That's been my journey, is expressing those different data points on that 3-dimensional graph. So using variety, collaboration, you can do this so many ways. It's building a toolbox, right? You're being able to connect the dots, and then this all ties into production with it's all a subjective dot on this 3-dimensional graph that somebody's aiming for. You can never truly understand it, but you can only interpret it from the words they say and the actions they give you through their instrument, emotion to responses, you playing things back and coming up with ideas. There's so many ways you can read the tells of what they're trying to do, but you'll never make it perfect. And I think that is a huge thing with clients, is to be like, we're going to make it our own, right? They have a vision, but the problem is their vision will never be fulfilled as soon as you bring in a collaborator. It'll be a new vision. It'll be a combined vision. It's no longer theirs. So I think that's a huge thing to break the ice with a lot of clients, is to being like, hey, if you want to work with me, I can just mix your stuff, but it's going to have my own flair on it always. Like this, it's a creative instrument. The computer, if you want to use it in those ways, there's infinite ways you can do it. So you pick avenues, right? The ones that you've carved out and made your own and know pretty damn well. And then others that you take more exploratory routes to carve new pathways of your understanding and toolbox to then come up with new solutions. And then those become your primary solutions and consistent solutions for new things. So you always have your own unique branching of foundational knowledge to more specific knowledge of these things. So you will have your own unique character when it comes to mixing and production and sound engineering, right? All that, especially sound engineering if you're actually making like circuits and stuff. But that's beside the point. More music engineering, just in general. So with that, and having that creative mindset on how you can understand your uniqueness, that'll help you with clients, and conveying that through conversation, right? When you first meet them, I like to do a hangout session essentially in the first meeting. Like, I don't try to stress too much about like we're doing things. It's more like, how are we going to work together? Like, you have this idea, and sure, I might know metal and you want to do metal and your metal sounds similar to mine. So, you feel like, I can make this thing sound exactly how you want it, right? I could make it exactly pretty close to how you want it, but it's always collaborative. So if your heads don't meet in the middle and you can't collaborate, really truly collaborate, you're going to be stuck even in a clientele, hiree, right? You're consulting them, you're working on their stuff, you're offering a service, and then from service to, the consumer, if the headspace isn't quite collaborative enough or accepting enough or open enough, there's going to be clashing of heads. Then it doesn't matter. You're not going to get anything that anybody likes because nobody's going to agree on anything. So you could be really good specifically what they want, but there could be the tiniest little thing, or just they don't want to pay you. There's so many things that can happen. So it's a vetting process, right? And you just give them that understanding that it's going to be a two-way street of working together, and it's going to have your influences and obviously their foundation on it if it's a mixing project. But if you're writing a song together, it honestly should be 50-50. Then for me, with what I'm trying to do and helping people understand the process of writing, recording, mixing, and mastering, I want to walk them through it, but also do it with them to feel the understanding of collaboration and what that could be, an expectation of what it could or should be. Maybe it's not right for them, right? But if they like it, then they have an understanding of what they like for other collaborative projects. And then we make the music together as 50-50 as possible. Maybe all the mixing and production I do, but writing, I want to be there and I want to split it up, which makes sense for their learning from my process and applying some of those techniques or methodologies to what they're doing, at least here, and then applying it however they will with what they learned from me and my habits to their own habits, and just making a better process for themselves for this whole thing. And that's the goal, is to be able to unlock all the channels and doors that are necessary to release music, right? Put it on Spotify, and then have it meld with a way that is tried and true, because I do it, and being able to make it their own with their own intention and their own knowledge they already have combined with what I show them, because it's a two-way street learning too. I'm going to learn stuff and they're going to learn stuff, and then I apply that to the next person who relates to those things and it works for them, and then I apply creative adjustments and stepping outside of the box with the new information I have to create a more versatile toolbox again. So being open-minded with that is huge, but being open with the fact that it's not just a one vision anymore. If you can crush that when you're meeting with them in the beginning, that'll help you so much more. It'll make it so much more painless, and it'll feel more like you're hanging out rather than like fighting it, right? You have to vet them. Otherwise it won't work, right? So learn that a little bit. Production's going pretty well. I mean, mainly trying new things. Doing a project for my business mentor, Sean Johnson, and his song Trio Dies. Amazing song, amazing songwriter. Awesome. This stuff is crazy cool. Doing mixing for that, taking requests, using different reference mixes that I'm not used to. Using multiple reference tracks to meet a middle of multiple expectations for the mix. Figuring out ways to also create a hierarchy of busing and tracks and effects channels and parallel busing in order to be legible for him as well. Something that he can create his own presets and own project settings and preset his project templates he can make based around the hierarchies that I create, and being more intentional myself with how I build it to make it legible in that way. I can be able to give him a better template to be able to make his own song sound more professional more easily. So working on that, but also just mixing it to make it sound awesome. So far it's pretty good. I think the vocals could be a little bit louder, but it's tough because I listen to it on different machines or different devices, different speakers, all that. And you just hear something else. Even the VSX headphones, I need to use those more, but it was hard because there was no direct mix that really fit the song I had that I was working on. I could have maybe pulled a Devin Townsend song, but kind of combining references to get different results in different ways for different parts of the mix to match, specific parts of another song, and not really worry too much about the others, but being in a ballpark. So I'm like having the lows and impact of a song feel like Sleep Token, making the wall of sound feel like Devin Townsend, having the fullness of a mix and clarity of it sound like Sleep Token and Trivium. So finding ways to blend those goals, those goals for similarities between multiple mixes, using pretty much more isolation techniques and listening back and forth and doing things at a time, like doing this for like 5 to 15 minutes, then switching to another mix and adjusting it there, and just pushing and pulling until I find a balancing point. But yeah, it's been pretty good. I can't complain. Sounds pretty awesome. So that's the main update. So catch you in the next one.